The storm doesn't break the chosen, it reveals them. They tried to break you in silence because they couldn't handle your presence in the light. They threw lies like knives, hoping your spirit would bleed out before you saw the truth. But every attack they sent bounced off the armor the universe gave you, forged from your pain, your patience, and your unshakable will. So let this hit where it should. They weren't fighting you. They were fighting the force behind you. The universe chose you, and now the same force they mocked is the one making them watch you rise. Understand this. Their war was never truly with your hands. It was with your purpose, and that's a battle they were never going to win. Before we go any deeper, take a moment to like and subscribe. When you engage, you help this message reach more chosen ones like you. And each time this message is shared, it sends a signal into the algorithm and into the ether. You're not just watching, you're helping light the path for someone else who needs this reminder. You already won. Welcome, the chosen ones. Some of you don't even realize yet that the war is over because your heart is still scanning the battlefield for the next blow. But listen closely. The universe has already declared the outcome. It's done. You made it. And yes, you're still standing because you were never meant to fall. Whatever it was, your quiet endurance, your silent scream, the nights you stared at the ceiling fighting off doubt, it worked. You passed a test they didn't even know existed. You're like a locked vault they tried to crack open, not knowing you were sealed by something far greater than their ego. That's why they're angry. That's why they're twitching in your presence, why they act confused when your light keeps rising with no source they can see. Because they don't understand chosen energy. Being chosen is not a title, it's a pressure, a process, a power that haunts those who tried to dim it. You are living proof that the universe does not play fair with its favorites. You weren't selected because you were loud or flawless, you were chosen because you endured what others would have collapsed under. You walked through hell and came out with flames still in your eyes, and now they feel it. The heat, the consequence, the shift. And here's something real. Your power is not just in your light. It's in how that light exposes their shadows. It's in the way your peace disrupts their chaos. Your very existence is a mirror they can't avoid. And they hate what it reflects. So why are you still doubting? Why are you questioning your glow? Who told you that survival was shameful? That stillness means defeat. You're not frozen. You're recalibrating. Just like nature itself pauses after a storm, so do the chosen. It doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're adjusting to the altitude of your new reality. And yes, it's yours. Already. They laughed at your silence, but now they're silenced by your presence. They underestimated your roots, but now they're choking on the fact that you bloomed anyway. This isn't karma, it's clarity. It's not revenge, it's revelation. Whatever you did, it worked. You won. It's already yours. Now walk like the universe meant for you to be seen. So here we are, standing at the edge of a truth most people will never taste. If you're still here, it's not by accident. The universe pulled you in because you're ready to remember what was already written for you. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you can feel it. That quiet certainty rising in your chest that says, it's already mine. This isn't motivation. This is confirmation. So take a breath and don't just listen. Absorb. Because if you really are one of the chosen, you'll feel it in your bones. Now, let's get into it, step by step. Number 1. They counted you out while you were counting stars. Now the sky belongs to you. They laughed at your silence, thinking it meant surrender, not knowing the universe was loading the weapon they couldn't see, you. They watched from the shadows, hoping to witness your fall, not knowing you were never falling. You were calculating, quiet like the eye of a storm before it swallows a city. They mistook your stillness for defeat because they've never seen what it looks like when the universe builds a weapon in the shape of a soul. They studied your collapse, took notes on your suffering, mocked your silence, whispered in corners about your breakdowns like they were the final chapter, but let this burn through every lie they told themselves. You were not collapsing. You were constructing. While they were entertained by your struggle, you were in the middle of engineering a resurrection that would blind them. What they thought was your end was only you stepping back to reload. And now, you rose, not out of nowhere, but out of everything they tried to bury you with. You were never the problem. You were the plan. The universe never abandoned you. It aligned for you. And while they were busy playing games with the system, you were syncing with the force that designed the system itself. That's why they can't understand your comeback, because to them, it looks like a glitch in the code. But this isn't a glitch. This is what it looks like when chosen energy activates in full. So why are you still doubting it? Why are you questioning the very power they feared in you all along? Stop acting like you're one of them. You're not. You were chosen, not because you were perfect, but because you were prepared. Not by comfort, but by chaos. You were forged in situations they wouldn't have survived 5 minutes in. And that's what scares them. That you did survive. That you came back quieter, sharper, heavier with purpose. That now, you're walking with something they can't copy, can't buy, and sure as hell can't stop. They saw your silence as surrender, not realizing it was strategy. You weren't broken, you were breaking through. And all the while they were talking, doubting, celebrating what they thought was your fall. The universe was already rewriting your outcome. You want a metaphor? Here's one. They were measuring your coffin while you were blueprinting your throne, and now they're shocked you're sitting on it. Chosen ones, hear this and let it snap something awake inside you. You were never outnumbered. You were just out of sight, hidden, protected, covered. They couldn't see what was happening in the dark because the universe only reveals its plans when it's too late for the enemy to stop them. And now that it's your time, they can't unsee it. You've become the storm they thought would destroy you. They mocked your pain, and now that pain has become your platform. They celebrated your silence, and now that silence has become your sound. And still, some of you are walking like the verdict's not in, like the win isn't real, like you need their permission to carry what the universe already handed you. Snap out of it. You're not under attack anymore. You're under confirmation. They lost. You won. It's already yours. The universe doesn't rewind victory. It seals it. You think your doubts are humility, but they're disrespect. Stop doubting the power that kept you alive. Stop acting like you got lucky. You didn't get lucky. You got aligned. They were trying to edit your story while the universe was carving it into stone. What you carry terrifies them, not just your light, but your endurance, your refusal to disappear, your ability to suffer in silence and rise without spectacle. That's why they talk. That's why they mimic. That's why they stalk your energy and try to wear it like a trend. But the truth is, no matter how many times they rehearse your role, the script doesn't respond to them because it was never written for them. They played with fire, thinking it was a game, not knowing the fire was sent to test you, not burn you. And now that you're walking through flames, like they're made of air, they finally realize you were the fire all along. So walk like it's already yours, because it is. Speak like you've already won, because you did. And if they're still watching, let them. Every step you take now is a sermon their soul can't unhear. Number 2, you stopped clapping for them, and that's when they heard thunder. The day you stopped waiting for their applause was the day the universe started echoing your name in rooms they'll never enter. They wanted you desperate, hungry for their approval, thirsty for their praise, addicted to their claps like a dog waiting for treats. But you outgrew that game, and when you did, everything changed. Not because you finally got what you wanted, but because you finally realized you didn't need it in the first place. You didn't win because they approved. You won when you stopped caring whether they even noticed. You stopped begging for credit in rooms where the lights were never meant to shine on you. And that, right there, is what made the ground shift. You removed their opinion from your throne room, and suddenly your power had no leash. You weren't built to be celebrated by the crowd. You were built to shake the ground they walk on, silently, steadily, without needing the echo of their applause to validate your steps. The universe didn't choose you for decoration. It chose you for disruption. And they know that now. Oh, they know. That's why the silence around your name got louder after your elevation. That's why they scroll past your wins like their screen just glitched. That's why they avoid mentioning your rise while secretly taking notes on how you did it. Because nothing hits the ego harder than someone who doesn't need permission to shine. You didn't win in spite of their silence. You won because of it. Their doubt was the fuel. Their absence was the blessing. Their silence became the background noise to your masterpiece. And now that it's finished, they want to act like they were part of the process. Let them choke on the truth. You moved in silence, not because you were unsure, but because your victory was never supposed to be a performance. You see, real chosen ones don't need a stage. They are the stage. Every step you took in the dark lit the path for someone else, and you didn't even stop to ask for a round of applause. That's what makes you dangerous. That's what terrifies them. Because how do you kill something that doesn't need outside approval to stay alive? They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't need an audience. Someone who kept showing up even when no one clapped, who kept creating even when no one watched, who kept becoming even when everyone left. That's a level of power that can't be copied, and you've mastered it. You learned how to clap for yourself, and that's when the universe started moving in sync with you, because energy respects the self-sourced, the ones who can cry, rebuild, rise, and roar without a crowd telling them when to breathe. You weren't chasing a spotlight. You are the light. That's the thing they'll never admit, that your glow burned through the fog they tried to keep you in, that your silence became so loud it drowned out their staged success, that your presence disrupted the algorithm of attention because it wasn't artificial, it was authentic, raw, earned. You didn't ask to be chosen. You were forged into it. That's why you don't flinch when you're alone. That's why their opinions hit like dust now. Because when the universe started favoring you, it silenced every voice that ever tried to define you. So stop explaining yourself to people who still think loud equals right. Stop shrinking to make their shadows feel safe. You were never meant to be palatable. You were meant to be undeniable. They can't understand how you kept going without validation because they've never built anything without a mirror. But you built while bleeding. You rose while ignored. You climbed while mocked. And now that you've arrived, they want to talk about how you did it, without ever asking why you had to. Because if they did, they'd have to admit what they did. The doors they closed, the support they withheld, the silence they weaponized, but none of it stopped you. You mastered the art of becoming without being seen. You grew in secret, and when you finally bloomed, it was too late for them to stop it, too late for them to twist it, too late for them to take credit for what they didn't build. The universe saw it all. Every moment you clapped for yourself in the dark, every time you got up with no one watching, every small win that felt like a whisper in a world screaming for attention. The universe took notes. Flipped the script, and now you're the headline, and they're the footnote. And yet, some of you still doubt, still look for confirmation in the eyes of people who never saw you, still think you need someone to say, "Well done," before you can own your greatness. Let me say it plain, that's disrespectful to what you've survived. That's dishonor to the force that carried you. You didn't walk through hell just to wait for someone to validate your exit. The moment you stopped waiting for applause, you became unstoppable. That was the shift. That was the resurrection, and now that it's done, they can't reverse it. So wear your silence like armor. Walk through their shadows like their smoke. They built their relevance on noise, but you built your kingdom in silence. And now you don't need to speak a word for the whole world to feel your presence. You don't need validation. You are the confirmation. And that thunder they keep hearing, that's just you walking. Number 3. You broke their game by refusing to play it. Now they're lost without you on the board. They wanted you in the race so they could trip you. You stepped off the track, and suddenly they had nowhere to run. Let's get this straight. You didn't win because you played harder. You won because you refused to play dirty. You saw the rigged system for what it was, a circus dressed like a kingdom, and instead of clowning around to fit in, you walked away and built your own arena. And now, they're scrambling, confused, looking for someone to copy because their whole identity depended on outshining you. You didn't just transcend the game, you dismantled it by not participating. They couldn't beat you, so they tried to bait you. They hoped you'd stoop low enough to fight in the mud, to get emotional, to start performing for their validation. But you didn't. You didn't argue when they lied. You didn't flinch when they mocked. You didn't chase after the trophies handed out in rigged rooms. That silence, that stillness, that unbothered energy, it shook them more than any confrontation ever could. Because real power doesn't need to yell, it just moves. They thought you were playing checkers, but you were off building your own damn game. One where your value wasn't up for debate. One where truth weighed more than image. One where legacy replaced clout. They ran around chasing applause, while you were out here chasing alignment. You weren't interested in playing king of the hill on a mountain made of lies. You knew the price of selling your integrity, and unlike them, you couldn't be bought. That's what separates the chosen from the copycats. They sell their soul for a seat at the table. You built your own table, and now they're begging for an invite. They operate in systems that reward the fake, the loud, the cruel. But you kept your frequency clean. You didn't trade your light for likes. You didn't sacrifice your morals just to be seen. And now they can't figure out why you're still rising, why you're still winning, even though you never followed their rules. Let me tell you why. Because the universe never honors corruption. It may look like they're ahead, but it's only a matter of time before every lie they told comes crashing down like a house of cards. The truth doesn't compete. It waits, and when it arrives, it doesn't knock. It floods. So when they tried to drag you into the mess, you chose elevation over reaction, and they hated you for it, because people who live off drama suffocate when you refuse to respond. You didn't lose anything by stepping away from their games. In fact, that's when you gained everything. You weren't built for petty battles. You were built to lead revolutions, quietly, deeply, without asking for permission. That's why they couldn't keep up. That's why the rules bent around you instead of breaking you. You refused to hustle for scraps from a table you were always meant to own. And don't think they didn't notice. Oh, they noticed. They watched you rise with no sponsor, win with no applause, speak truth with no script. You moved through a system designed to chew people up, and you didn't just survive, you walked out with your crown still on. That kind of resilience, you can't teach it. You are it. And still, some of you are sitting there wondering why they won't accept you. Let me make it clear, rejection from the corrupt is confirmation of your calling. If they don't like you, you're probably doing it right. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out and stand alone if needed. Because being chosen often means walking roads too narrow for the crowd. You transcended their entire blueprint, and now they're stuck trying to figure out how you're still rising when you don't play by the script. That's the power of being chosen. You don't compete. You shift everything by simply existing. You disrupt patterns. You collapse illusions. You make the noise stop just by walking into the room. So don't let their chaos fool you. Keep walking above it. They can't touch you if you don't descend. Stay elevated. Stay untouchable. Stay chosen. Because while they were chasing the game, you became the glitch that broke it. And now, they're playing by your rules, even if they'll never admit it. Number 4, they gambled on the ghost of who you were, but you buried that version in silence. They kept throwing dirt on your name, not realizing you already held the funeral, and the one being buried was never coming back. They were betting on your past like it was a fixed race. Like your history was a leash you'd never shake off. They thought they had you figured out, like your mistakes were tattoos, like your pain had a time limit, like your evolution had a ceiling. They placed their bets on your brokenness, your insecurities, your lowest points, thinking you'd never rise above the version of you they clung to for comfort. But here's what they missed. You didn't evolve. You vanished. You let that old version die without an announcement, without a speech, without asking for permission. And when they came looking for the old you, the one that second-guessed everything, that lived for validation, that played small just to survive, they found silence, a void, a ghost, because that you doesn't live here anymore. That was your real win, not just growth, rebirth. They thought they had the blueprint to your downfall. They remembered your weaknesses, your stumbles, your old patterns, and assumed you'd keep circling the same drain. But what they didn't understand is that chosen ones don't circle. They ascend. You weren't stuck, you were cocooning. And now you've emerged unrecognizable, untouchable, and unstoppable. They tried to resurrect your past to keep you small, dragged your name through the dirt, hoping the stains would stick. But you let them talk. You let them spin their stories. Because while they were busy selling your history, you were writing a future so bright it burned their script to ash. You owe them no explanation. You owe that old version of you no resurrection. The one who tolerated disrespect, who made herself small to make others comfortable, who lived in apology. She's gone, dead, buried. And the beautiful part? You didn't even hold a service. You outgrew the shell without warning. And now the ones who once laughed at your pain are confused by your power, because they kept looking for the weakness that no longer lives in you. They can't recognize your energy because it doesn't shrink anymore. It confronts, it owns, it walks like the storm it survived. That's the thing about chosen ones. We don't make noise when we shed our skin. We just don't fit the old story anymore. Let them dig through your past. Let them obsess over the ashes, because while they're busy trying to pin you to an expired version of yourself, you're out here living like the upgrade they'll never access. They can't touch you. Not because you're hiding, but because you've elevated beyond their reach. Your silence isn't guilt, it's graduation. You didn't just walk away from the past, you torched the bridge and planted a garden on the ashes. You didn't rebuild what was broken, you built something brand new. And now, when they throw your name around like they still know you, they're only exposing how outdated their data is. You were never meant to stay in that old form. You were never meant to keep carrying those wounds as your identity. The universe knew what it was doing when it pulled you into isolation. It wasn't punishment. It was process. You were being recoded, reforged, rewritten. So stop feeling like you owe the world an explanation for your transformation. You don't. Chosen ones don't announce elevation. We become it. Quietly, completely. And don't you dare feel guilty for outgrowing people who only knew how to love your brokenness. You are not responsible for their inability to adapt to your healing. You were never going to stay broken just to make them comfortable. They were betting you'd stay stuck in your old story, but you're out here living in a plot twist they never saw coming. You were the one variable they couldn't control, and now they have to sit back and watch you become everything they said you'd never be, without their help, without their validation, and without looking back. They bet on your pain. You chose your power. They bet on your silence. You chose your voice. They bet on your limits. You chose your freedom. And now you owe nothing to the narrative they wrote without your consent. Let them choke on the old story. You're writing a new one in a language they never learned. And this time, you're the author, the editor, and the headline. Number 5. You didn't just break curses, you turned them into warnings. They thought they were placing a curse on you, but all they did was sign their name on a lesson the universe would use to elevate you. This wasn't just your battle. Don't get it twisted. You weren't just up against your own pain, your own trauma, your own doubts. You were standing in the ring with centuries of silence, fear, and spiritual debt passed down through your bloodline like an inheritance of chains. But the universe didn't just place you in the storm, it built you for it. And when it came time to face those demons, you didn't flinch, you didn't run. You stood still, and you made the curse blink first. They underestimated you because they were too busy watching your surface. They didn't know your soul had been called to break patterns so old they didn't even have a name anymore. You weren't just healing. You were reprogramming reality itself. The pain that ran in your family ran into you, and for the first time in generations, it lost. You were the line in the sand, the no more, the it ends here. That's why it felt so heavy. That's why your isolation was so intense. That's why the attacks didn't let up. You weren't just dragging yourself forward. You were dragging the weight of every silent ancestor who never had a voice, every broken cycle that never met resistance, until you. And yes, they tried to make you pay for carrying that power. The ones who were comfortable in their curses, who benefited from the dysfunction, who thrived in the chaos, they came for you. Because your healing exposed their wounds, your elevation threatened their illusions. Your peace shook their foundation. They didn't just doubt you, they resented you. Because to them, your freedom looked like betrayal, your growth looked like arrogance, your strength made them feel small, but that wasn't your problem. That was their curse, rising up to meet the truth. And you didn't back down. You took every generational lie, every inherited wound, every pattern passed down like scripture, and you snapped it in half. You rewrote the narrative with your blood, your tears, your grit. You weren't handed peace. You built it, brick by bloody brick. And now, the curses that once owned your family don't even speak your name without trembling. Let them feel that. Let the curses that were sent to end you live long enough to see you thrive. That's the real revenge. Not retaliation, but transformation. You didn't just break the cycle. You embarrassed it. You made it regret ever touching you, because what was meant to destroy you became your fuel. The very fire meant to consume you became your crown. You walked through generational hell and came out divine. You didn't just survive trauma, you dismantled its throne. You kicked down doors that were locked for decades. You healed wounds that weren't even yours. You cried tears that belonged to people you've never met, but whose pain lived in your cells. You screamed for ancestors who died whispering. You chose truth over tradition, and you burned the script that said pain was the price of belonging. That's what makes you dangerous. You didn't just step away from the curse. You turned around and dared it to try again. And when it did, it broke on impact. Because the chosen don't just run, they return fire. This is why your name holds weight now. This is why your silence makes noise. This is why they look at you like they've seen a ghost, because in a way they have. You carry the echoes of those who came before you, but unlike them, you didn't stay stuck in the echo. You became the voice, the final say, the correction. So if you're still wondering why it was so hard, why it felt like your soul was being pulled apart just to hold yourself together, understand this. You were never meant to just survive. You were called to end what others didn't have the strength to face. You are the curse breaker, the pattern disruptor, the bloodline reformer. And now they know. Now the curses know. And best believe they regret ever laying a hand on you. Number 6. You took every hit like a curse, then turned it into a blueprint they'll never decode. They thought they were wounding you, but every strike was just the universe drawing up your divine architecture. Let them talk about how they hurt you. Let them sit in circles and joke about the betrayal, the backstabbing, the setups, and the sabotage. Let them smirk at the chaos they threw your way, because while they were busy watching you break, they didn't realize something deeper was happening. You were learning. You weren't just getting hit, you were collecting data, you were mapping pressure points, you were decoding patterns. Every time they betrayed you, your intuition sharpened. Every time you were left bleeding, your soul recorded it like sacred text. Pain didn't destroy you, it taught you. It handed you keys that only come from surviving what should have ended you. That's what they don't get. They thought they were throwing chaos at you to confuse you, but the chosen don't go numb. We go deeper. We don't react. We read. And while they were hoping you'd explode, you evolved. Quietly, coldly, cleanly. You became an architect in your own storm. You took the betrayal and turned it into blueprint. You turned manipulation into foresight. You turned rejection into self-worth. You stopped needing to explain yourself. You started seeing through people without asking questions. You no longer respond emotionally to what you used to beg to understand, because now you see. And that terrifies them. They don't know how to move around you anymore. What used to trigger you now exposes them. What used to drain you now fuels your fire. You stopped taking things personally and started treating everything like information. Cold, clear, calculated information. That's the level of wisdom pain handed you. That's why your presence is surgical now. You know who you are, and more importantly, you know who they are, not because they told you, but because their betrayal revealed it. Their actions gave you X-rays of their soul. Their disloyalty gave you blueprints to every trap they thought you'd fall into. You weren't just walking through pain, you were being trained by it. You were in a classroom disguised as a battlefield, and now you move differently, strategically, intuitively. You speak less, you see more, you respond slower, you cut deeper, but only when necessary. Because now you know not everything deserves a reaction, but everything holds a lesson. They thought you were naive. They thought the heartbreak would break you open and leave you empty, but it only cracked the shell around your real power. It introduced you to parts of yourself you would have never found in comfort. That's the irony. They thought they were stopping you, but they were activating you. The wounds they left behind, they became sacred maps, holy blueprints, proof that you are who the universe said you were, not because you never fell, but because you never stayed down, because every fall came with a lesson. And every lesson came with elevation. That's the difference between the chosen and the cursed. When the cursed get hit, they repeat the cycle. When the chosen get hit, they build from it. So let them keep trying. Let them throw shade, throw blame, throw knives. You already know the pattern. You already studied the design. And now, you're untouchable, not because you don't feel, but because you understand. You've learned the art of turning injury into insight. You've turned every scar into sacred geometry, every betrayal into divine math. The pain didn't kill you, it structured you. They thought they were breaking you, but you were busy writing sacred codes in your bones. The kind of codes that don't just protect you, they guide you. So stop apologizing for how quiet you've become. Stop explaining your silence, your peace, your detachment. You earned this stillness. You earned this level of knowing. You earned this new version of you, the one who doesn't flinch anymore. Because when they sent you pain, they forgot one thing. Chosen ones don't just take the hit, we turn it into holy architecture. And now, you're walking in buildings made of the very bricks they threw at your head. Number 7, they lit fires to lure you in. You let them burn alone in the dark. They wanted a war. You gave them silence, and in that silence, they heard everything they feared about you, that you never needed to fight to win. They came at you sideways, grinning with venom behind their teeth, passive-aggressive posts, fake concern disguised as conversation, snide comments dressed as jokes. All of it was bait, all of it designed to pull you out of your power and drag you into their arena, the arena of ego, chaos, drama, and distraction. But you didn't move, you didn't swing, you didn't flinch. That silence, that stillness, that refusal to react, it starved them. They weren't just trying to hurt you, they were trying to provoke you. Because people like that, the ones who thrive on distortion and division, need your reaction to survive. Your peace is a famine to their dysfunction. Your indifference is poison to their manipulation. And when you didn't give them what they came for, they started to starve on their own venom. You didn't defend yourself because you didn't need to. The truth doesn't explain itself to lies. Royalty doesn't respond to rumors. Light doesn't argue with shadows. You saw the trap for what it was. They wanted to use your own fire against you, get you to act out of character so they could say, "See, I told you." But the chosen don't perform for approval. You knew that reacting would cost you more than silence ever would, so you took the hit and you let them choke on their own performance. You let them expose themselves without lifting a single finger. That's how powerful you've become. And let's be honest, it wasn't easy. The old you would have fired back. The old you would have written the paragraph, clapped back, posted the receipts. But the old you had something to prove. This version knows you already won. There's nothing left to prove to people who were never going to see you clearly anyway. They wanted to pull you into a mud fight so they could call you dirty, but you stayed clean. You stayed still. You watched them wrestle shadows, scream into the void, and spiral in the silence you left behind. And that silence, it was louder than any response you could have given. They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't flinch, who doesn't take the bait, who doesn't feel the need to prove their worth, their loyalty, their identity every time they're questioned. That's terrifying to people who built their identity around reactions. You didn't just win the argument, you made the argument irrelevant. Because while they were playing petty games, you were building legacy. While they were feeding their ego, you were feeding your vision. They came with distractions, and you responded with distance. They brought war. And you brought peace. Not because you were weak, but because you were strategic, wise, aligned. And now they look foolish, talking to themselves in a room they built for your downfall, running plays you've already outgrown, swinging at shadows long after you've left the building. They still think you're listening, but you've been gone. Gone from the mindset that needed their approval, gone from the energy that begged for validation, gone from the cycles that made you feel small just so they could feel big. Let them spiral, let them sit with their chaos. Because the greatest flex wasn't your response, it was your refusal. And don't feel bad about it. You didn't stay silent to be passive. You stayed silent to stay sovereign. You understood the cost of reaction. You chose peace over pettiness. You chose your path over their performance. That's not weakness. That's warrior restraint. That's chosen discipline. And now they'll never forget it. The silence that echoed louder than any scream, the calm that broke them more than confrontation ever could, the stillness that said, "I'm not coming down there. You're going to have to destroy yourself without me." They tried to provoke you into proving yourself, but you did something far more lethal. You proved you never had to. Number 8. They're just now seeing it, but you've been carrying the crown in your spirit for years. They thought you were becoming, but the truth is, you were remembering. The crown didn't appear. You just stopped hiding it. Let them gasp now. Let them act shocked, like this is some sudden win, like you just stumbled into favor, like the blessings came out of nowhere. Let them whisper behind closed doors about your overnight success. Because that's all they have left. Confusion. They don't realize they're just watching the physical world catch up to what your spirit already knew. You didn't just earn this, you already owned it. This was never about luck or coincidence or some last-minute miracle. You've been carrying this outcome in your spirit long before they ever saw a glimpse of it. The chosen don't manifest the future, we recall it. We walk with what's already written, and the rest of the world simply takes time to see what we've already claimed in silence. That's the part they'll never understand. They thought they could outwork you, outspeak you, outshine you. But this wasn't about talent or talk, it was about alignment. You weren't chasing, you were remembering. You were tuning your soul back to the frequency of what's already yours. And once that clicked, reality had no choice but to obey. You were never waiting on the win. The win was waiting on you to believe it, to accept it, to walk in it like it was already done. And now that you are, they can't stand it. Because they watched you in the drought, they watched you in the silence. They saw you walk through valleys that would have eaten most people alive, and now they can't make sense of how you kept showing up with confidence, how you moved like the battle was already won. Because it was. You didn't fake it, you felt it, deep in your bones, in your breath, in your being, the knowing, the promise, the quiet truth that whispered, it's already yours, even when everything around you looked like loss. That's what scares them, that your confidence wasn't tied to results, that your peace wasn't dependent on proof, that you kept building with no audience, kept trusting with no applause, kept glowing with no spotlight, because you weren't performing for them. You were aligning with the divine. See, the universe doesn't operate on human timelines. It doesn't care who's watching, clapping, or doubting. It moves when energy aligns. And your energy? It's been holding royalty while your circumstances were still dressed like survival. That disconnect wasn't delusion. It was design. You held the crown in private long before the world handed you the throne in public. That's why this moment hits different. It's not a surprise, it's a return, a restoration, a reflection. You are witnessing the external catch-up to what's been alive inside you for years. The world is finally seeing the frequency you've been walking in, and they don't know how to react because to them it's new. To you, it's just confirmation. They didn't believe because they couldn't see it, but the chosen don't wait for sight. We move on knowing. And now that you're here, don't you dare shrink to make them comfortable with your rise. This wasn't handed to you. This was activated in you. You endured the storm. You carried the weight. You sat in the silence when no one understood your vision. And now that it's here, walk in it like it's home. Because it is. You've already been crowned in the spirit. Reality is just adjusting its focus. And don't feel like you owe anyone the process. They didn't believe when it was invisible. They don't get to question it now that it's undeniable. Let them talk. Let them speculate. Let them create stories around your success. But the truth is simple. What they call a breakthrough is just you stepping fully into what's always been yours. You're not lucky, you're aligned. You're not just winning, you've already won. And now the rest of the world is just catching up to what your spirit celebrated a long time ago. Number 9, you didn't just level up, you became unreachable. They're still trying to fight the version of you that no longer exists, but you've already left the building, and now you're living where their hands can't reach and their lies can't breathe. Let's make something crystal clear. You didn't just level up, you didn't just glow up or move on. No, you shifted dimensions. You didn't climb a ladder, you walked through a portal. The old reality, the one where you were doubted, broken, underestimated, no longer applies to the person you've become. They're still throwing stones at a shadow. They're still dragging your name through conversations that don't even have your energy in them anymore. They're still rehearsing comebacks for a version of you that died in silence while they were busy mocking your silence. But the truth is, you outgrew the very environment where they once had power over you. You're not ignoring them. You're simply not there anymore. The new you lives beyond what they understand. Your growth outpaced their projections. Your healing outran their gossip. Your purpose rewrote every limitation they tried to place on your name. And now they're swinging at air. They're shadowboxing your evolution, hoping to provoke a reaction from someone who has already exited the room, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, vibrationally. They don't have access. Because you didn't just win, you vanished from the systems that fed on your suffering. You stopped giving CPR to dead situations. You walked away from the game, and now the players don't know what to do. You see, people only feel powerful when they know your weak spots. But you healed those. Quietly. Completely. Now there's nothing left for them to poke. And it's driving them mad. The silence you move in now, it's not distance, it's elevation. You didn't detach just to protect your peace. You transcended the level where their chaos even exists. They can't touch you because you're not vibrating at the same frequency anymore. You broke the contract. You outlived the curse. You moved from surviving to soaring, and the altitude is too much for them. Let them keep calling your name from the ground. Let them keep trying to summon the old you with insults, with lies, with petty provocations. You owe them nothing, not your time, not your energy, not even your anger. Because where you're going, their names don't echo. You didn't just change, you escaped. And the most powerful part, you never had to announce it. No revenge, no explosion, no spectacle, just silence, strategy, and a spiritual shift so profound they still can't track it. You're not just hard to reach now, you're impossible to return to. And now, here we are, full circle. If you've made it this far, it means something in your spirit knew this message was already yours. Not a coincidence, a confirmation. The war is over, the crown is on, and reality is finally catching up to what's been written about you all along. So own it, fully, loudly, unapologetically. If this hit your soul, like this video, subscribe for more truth they don't want you to hear, and drop the number 77 in the comments to declare that it's already yours. Share this with another chosen one. Let them wake up too.